Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we're looking closely at something, well, really fundamental. The power a parent's words have on a child's emotional life, their well-being.
Yeah, it's profound, and we're exploring this through a very personal story shared by a listener. We're calling her Stephanie.
Right. She wrote to us, detailing her experiences, her reflections on growing up with her mother's expectations, and how certain words really cast a long shadow.
And as we get into this, it's so important we approach Stephanie's story with empathy. This is sensitive stuff.
Absolutely. Many listening might hear echoes of their own experiences, perhaps.
Exactly. So our goal here isn't about blame. It's about trying to understand the emotional journey she describes.
Identifying those key moments, those turning points, maybe.
Yes, and reflecting on the lasting impact. And maybe finding some insights into healing, too.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Stephanie talks about initially believing she was loved by her mother, which sounds like a normal, foundational feeling.
It's what every child needs, fundamentally. But for Stephanie, this feeling started to, well, it got complicated.
How so?
Her mother was described as a perfectionist, and Stephanie felt this immense pressure to be the perfect daughter.
What did that look like? Straight A's.
Straight A's, being perfectly obedient, the whole ideal package.
That sounds like a lot for a kid, just constant pressure.
It really is. Stephanie talks about trying so hard to please her mom, just wanting that approval.
Which is completely natural for a child.
Of course. But the feeling she got back was that it was never quite enough. Nothing she did really measured up.
And that led to feeling inadequate.
Yes, she uses the word small, like she was being made to feel small, never good enough as she was.
That's heartbreaking. That feeling that your worth is tied to achieving something impossible.
And it wasn't just a general feeling. Stephanie describes a very specific moment, a real flashpoint that crystallized everything.
The 8th grade report card incident.
Exactly. This seems to be a really critical turning point.
So what happened? She brought home a report card.
Yeah, and she actually had a B on it. She felt pretty proud, which seems reasonable. But her mother's reaction wasn't pride, it was fury.
Over a B.
Wow. And she didn't just express displeasure, she demanded a meeting with the teacher, the principal.
Oh, that must have been mortifying for Stephanie. Publicly shamed, almost.
Hugely humiliating for a 13-year-old. But it was the specific words her mother used that really landed like a blow.
What did she say?
She told Stephanie right then, "You're such a burden."
Oh, wow. Just hearing that secondhand hits hard.
Imagine being 13, already navigating all that adolescent stuff, and your own mother calls you a burden.
Stephanie described it as feeling like the ground just disappeared beneath her.
I can believe it. It attacks that core sense of safety and belonging.
And the aftermath. She was grounded.
For weeks. And worse, maybe, was the silence from her mother. Just icy silence.
Leaving her completely alone with those words.
She wrote about crying herself to sleep every night, just questioning everything. Am I really a burden? Am I worthless?
And that phrase, "you're such a burden," it didn't just fade away, did it?
No, that's the devastating part. It got stuck. It became what psychologists might call an internalized voice.
Like her own thoughts started saying it.
Exactly. It started to sound like the truth inside her head, fueling feelings of worthlessness, this deep sense that she was somehow a mistake.
What a terrible weight for a young person to carry.
It really shows the power of parental words, doesn't it? Research is clear on this. Kids internalize these messages so deeply.
Especially from parents.
Especially, negative attacks on a child's basic self can create deep, deep shame and inadequacy that are incredibly hard to shake off later.
Like planting a seed, you said earlier.
Yeah, a seed of negativity that just keeps growing.
And unfortunately, Stephanie mentioned this wasn't like a one-off comment.
No, there were others over time. Phrases like, "you'll never be good enough." And the cumulative effect was, she started to believe it. She internalized this idea that she was fundamentally a failure.
It wasn't just the sting of one remark, but the constant dripping.
Precisely. A pattern of criticism creates this reinforcing loop, strengthening that negative self-image.
And you see the consequences later on in her teens.
Definitely. She describes struggling with anxiety, really low self-esteem through high school.
Finding it hard to make friends.
Yeah, because she was afraid of being a burden to them too, afraid of imposing.
That fear just permeated everything.
It seems so. And it's sobering that even now, at 25, she says these feelings still echo.
Still impacting her job, her relationships.
Yes, that constant second-guessing, doubting herself, feeling this underlying need to somehow prove she's not a burden.
It just shows how deep those early roots go.
It really does. Which brings us to how Stephanie tries to make sense of her mother's behavior.
Right, she reflects on why her mother might have been like that.
Yeah, she considers things like maybe her mother had her own strict upbringing, or maybe she was projecting her own insecurities,
Trying to find a reason behind the criticism.
or even misguidedly thinking she was making Stephanie stronger, more resilient somehow.
That's a common rationalization sometimes, isn't it? I was hard on you to toughen you up.
It is, but Stephanie's perspective, especially her childhood perspective, is crucial here.
What did she feel she needed then?
Love, acceptance, not constant criticism, regardless of the intent behind it.
The impact is what lands.
Exactly. Intentions don't erase the emotional wound. And we know from research, overly critical parenting is strongly linked to anxiety, depression, low self-worth later in life.
It undermines that fundamental nurturing role a parent should ideally play.
It can become destructive instead of nurturing, sadly.
But thankfully, there's a shift in Stephanie's story towards healing.
Yes, moving out at 20 was a big step.
And starting therapy, that seems key.
Absolutely. She describes therapy as the place where she really began to understand the true impact of her mother's words, to see the connection,
Start unpacking it all.
and to begin challenging that core belief, to understand intellectually at first maybe that she wasn't a burden. That was never true.
But she's very honest that healing isn't like a quick fix. It's ongoing.
Oh, definitely. It's a process, often a really challenging one.
She mentions years of no contact with her mother.
Yes. And then eventually, a single apology, just the words, "I'm sorry."
That must have been complex to receive.
Incredibly. Stephanie talks about her uncertainty around forgiveness. Does that one apology cover years of pain? Does her mother truly get the depth of the hurt?
Those are valid questions.
Yeah.
Forgiveness is complicated.
Very. And it's important to say healing doesn't require forgiveness, not in the sense of absolving the other person or reconciling. Sometimes it's about finding peace for yourself.
And for Stephanie, part of that seems to be learning to love herself.
That's a powerful part of her reflection, building that self-acceptance and self-compassion that was missing earlier.
It feels like the antidote in a way.
It really does, and it aligns with what experts say about healing from this kind of childhood experience. First, acknowledge the pain. Don't minimize it.
Then seek support,
Right?
like therapy.
Exactly. Process those experiences, and then deciding about the relationship itself. That's deeply personal.
Rebuilding isn't always possible, or even healthy.
No. Setting boundaries is crucial, and sometimes that might mean distance, if that's what protects your well-being. Forgiveness might bring closure for some, but for others, moving on is the healthier path.
Stephanie looks back and wishes her mother could have just seen her, seen the child needing love.
And chosen her words more carefully, realized their weight.
Her journey now is about breaking free from that pain.
Yes, and she ends her story with such a poignant question.
Can a relationship like this ever truly heal?
It's a question many wrestle with, and the reality is it can be possible, but it takes a lot.
What does it take?
Genuine acknowledgement of the harm from the person who caused it, real effort from both sides, empathy, understanding. It's not easy.
And sometimes it just doesn't happen.
Sometimes it doesn't. And then healing becomes about the individual finding their own peace, separate from that relationship. Every journey is unique.
Stephanie's story is so powerful, so vulnerable. Thank you to her for sharing it.
Absolutely. It really highlights the incredible lasting impact our words carry, especially a parent's words.
It definitely makes you think, doesn't it?
Mhm.
About the communication in our own lives, maybe growing up or even now.
How those messages might still be playing out, consciously or unconsciously.
Her courage is remarkable, both in sharing and in her commitment to her own healing journey.
Truly, it's a testament to resilience.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, maybe the thought to leave you with is this. Knowing the profound influence of these early experiences, these words,
Yeah. How can we be more conscious, more nurturing in how we communicate?
not just with our children, if we have them, but in all our relationships. And maybe most importantly, how we talk to ourselves.
That internal voice. It's a powerful question to reflect on.